Hi everyone, it's Alia or Cake Legend and welcome back to another tutorial video. Today we're going to be stacking these two 3-tier cakes and I'm going to be showing you two different ways to do it. To start, you're going to need all of these items here. For supports, I'm using bubble tea straws. And you want your 3 cake tiers to already be stacked and chilled. We're going to start by taking our cake boards and cutting out a hole in the middle. These are going to sit underneath each tier to hold it up, and we need the hole in the middle so that our extra long dowel back there can go through the entire cake. Since my cakes consist of a 6-inch cake on top, an 8-inch in the middle, and a 10-inch on the bottom, I have a gold 6-inch and a gold 8-inch board, which I'm cutting the holes out of, and then the 10-inch cake is sitting on a 12-inch white cake drum. Starting with the bottom 10-inch layer, we're going to pull it out of the freezer and start inserting our supports. So I laid the cake board on top so I knew where to place the support so that it was going to be close to the edge but not right on the edge. Then I pushed it into the cake all the way down to the board and repeated this 11 more times so that we had a nice support circle. This bottom layer had 12 bubble tea cake straws in it. Because this is the one that's going to have to hold the most weight, so we really want to make sure that it's strong. Now we need to cut them down so that they're level with the top of the cake. So I placed my scissors so that they were flush with the cake, then I just lifted the straw up, snipped off the end, and pushed it back down. Repeat this process with all of your straws until you have your full support circle. If you're using a different kind of support, like maybe some hard plastic tubes, you may not need to do as many as I'm doing here, but I always think it's safer to do more than you think you need because you don't want your cake to collapse. Once you have all your straws cut and level with the cake, we're gonna go and put some buttercream on top of that to help our cake board stick, and then we're gonna grab the next tier from the freezer and just place it on top. Since that gold cake board has the same diameter as this middle tier, it gets covered up completely once we place this on top of it. Just like that. So here we have a 2-tier cake. You could stop here, but we're doing another tier. So we got to do the bubble tea straw thing again. In the middle tier, I only placed 8, doing the same process as before, sticking them in and cutting them so that they're flush with the cake. And once we have our second support circle all finished, we're gonna put the cake board on top of that and then the final tier on top of the board. Also making sure that we're using buttercream to stick everything together. In this method, we're going to finish stacking the cake completely before we ice it, which is why all these tiers are only stacked and not decorated. In the second method, we're gonna mask and then stack. So here's our cake all stacked, except we need one more thing, our large support dowel that's going to go through the middle. Sharpen the edge so that it can pierce the cake drum at the bottom, and then we're just going to cut it down so that we know it will fit inside of our cake properly. We don't want the end sticking out of the top of the cake. And once we get the dowel in there, we're going to put this back in the freezer to chill for a little bit before we start masking it. Now, if I'm being completely honest, this was my first time stacking a multi-tiered cake completely and then masking it. I had seen Rachel do it a lot at the shop, and I decided to just give it a shot. She told me that she starts from the bottom and works her way to the top, but I actually did it the opposite way because this cake was supposed to have that raw edge on each tier, and I just thought that it would be easier to do it from top to bottom because that just made more sense in my mind. So here I'm masking the top tier of the cake. No crumb coat really necessary, although I did use the piping bag quite a bit to fill in the gaps and help me make it the way that it needed to be. It was a learning process. There was a lot of back and forth and but I managed to smooth out the top tier. We got a beautiful edge, and then I used my spatula to create that horizontal texture. Now I'm moving on to the middle tier, and I forgot to change the angle of the camera when I started, so sorry about that, but I changed it right here. I did the same thing where I applied the icing but also used the piping bag to help me and then smoothed it out with my scraper and used the spatula to create the texture last. Now we're moving on to the bottom tier, repeating the exact same thing until our cake is all finished. Also, do you guys see what I mean about working top to bottom so that the rough edge can stay untouched and beautiful? I hope you know what I mean. I feel like if I did bottom to top, I would have wrecked it. Anyways, so after I put on that texture, the cake was all finished. A super simple wedding cake, but so beautiful. And that's the first way to stack a 3-tier cake. However, if you aren't comfortable with stacking the entire cake and then masking it, the second method is going to be for you. In the second method, we stack all of our cake tiers like we normally would, and then we mask them all like we normally would and stick them in the freezer, and then we stack them after they're chilled. So this cake is the exact same design as the first one you just saw, except it has a different buttercream on the outside. The first one had just white vanilla buttercream, and this one is actually Earl Grey flavored. And on the rough edge, we're gonna paint some gold. Since this tier that I'm decorating right now is going to go on top, we don't need to put any supports in it. However, the next 2 tiers will need the supports, so we're gonna stick the bubble tea straws into the cake before we mask the cake in buttercream. So moving on to the 8-inch middle tier, we're going to stick 8 bubble tea straws in there, doing the same thing we did before, where we push them all the way down to the cake board and then cut off the top so that they're flush with the cake. And then we're going to place some buttercream on top of that and our cake board, which should also have the middle cut out for the dowel. And then we're just gonna mask the cake like we normally would. Just pretend that there's no straws inside and no cake board underneath. The buttercream on top. But also please make sure that it actually is there because we don't want your cake to collapse. Once the middle tier is done, throw it in the freezer and repeat the process again for the bottom tier. Now let all of your cake tiers chill in the freezer until they're very firm before you stack them. If you don't let them chill long enough, then all of your hard work is going to be ruined as soon as you pick up that cake. So let them chill, then get a hot knife, which we use to cut along the bottom of the cake that's stuck to the old cake board. A hot knife helps get a cleaner cut and not ruin so much of your hard work. Then you want to very quickly pick up the cake and put it on top of the bottom tier. You really want to do that fast because your hands are warm, and the moment you start touching the cake, it's going to start melting the buttercream. So that's why I'm coming in with the spatula here to fix any parts of the cake that got a little smudged when I picked it up. And now to hide the ugly seam that we had to cut along with our hot knife, we're going to put some buttercream into a small piping bag and pipe it all around the base, and then use your finger to smooth it out. It hides it so well. However, you could also do a border or some other kind of decoration if that's preferred. This trick really does help you get that seamless look though. Now we're going to do the same thing with our top tier. So it just came out of the freezer. I'm using the hot knife to cut along the bottom so that it's not connected to this cake board anymore. And then I'm going to quickly place it onto my stacked cake. And remember that we already put supports in the bottom two tiers. So all we have to do after we place this last tier on top is stick our large dowel through the middle of the cake. And here she is, all finished with the gold painted on the edges. I think it looks so beautiful. And that's the second way to stack a 3-tier cake. I hope you enjoyed this video and found this tutorial helpful, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!